I would like to say good morning. I'm Adele Imrie, Chair of the TCHC Board's Building, Investment, Finance, and Audit Committee, and I want to welcome everyone to the public session of today's committee. In light of the continued need for social distancing to limit the spread of COVID, we are still holding our meetings virtually. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement that the land each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. During the public session, we will have 8 reports brought forward to the committee for information. This includes the Homes Project Closeout Report, which also includes KPMG Quality Assurance Closeout Report for homes, and KPMG representatives will be here to present their findings as guests of the committee. There will also be 3 other standing quarterly reports. There are also 6 reports recommending approval from the committee, and all of these reports are outlined clearly on today's agenda. As far as deputations go for this meeting, we continue to follow the established deputation procedures for members of the public in voting during the course of today's virtual meeting. Members of the public had an opportunity to send in a written deputation on any matter as it relates to the agenda, or to participate in person. I will say that no deputation requests were received for this meeting today. My final chair's remarks relate to 2 very sincere thank yous that I would like to make on behalf of the BIFAC committee to Roseanne Lee and to Kelly Skeeth. It is their last meeting of BIFAC, and Roseanne is leaving TCHC after 7 years as CFO, and we wanted to thank her for her support of this committee, and also for her financial leadership of TCHC. It's a very complex organization, and we appreciate all that she's done to move us forward. I know she's worked very hard, and we also appreciate Roseanne's continued commitment to TCHC, and she is committed to assisting Nagesh and Raymond through this year's budgeting process, even as she moves on to a new role with Toronto Parking Authority. And we really appreciate the commitment that she is giving to TCHC. On a personal note, I did want to thank Roseanne for all the time that she's given me to try to bring me up to speed and to understand TCHC. As I said, it is a very complex financial organization. And I would like to say that it has been a true pleasure to work with Roseanne over these last almost 3 years as chair of BIFAC. And we wish you good luck and much success as you move on to the Toronto Parking Authority. And my other thank you goes out to Kelly. This is also her last BIFAC meeting, and we certainly want to acknowledge your professional contribution to TCHC as Chief Development Officer. TCHC development projects are very complex, multi-year projects, and we certainly appreciate Kelly's leadership as she shepherds these projects forward, and has always reported to BIFAC on the progress as well as the issues that are facing our individual redevelopment projects. And so we certainly appreciate your work on the transition of TCHC development roles to create TO and assisting with the establishment of the certain rules and procedures that must stay with TCHC, given our tenants and the issues that we face as we redevelop and relocate our tenants. And we certainly wish you great success at IO. And thank you both very, very much for all you've done to support our committee. So Jag's clapping, and I think that Kelly and Roseanne deserve a round of applause. So thank you very, very much. And good luck. So we will move on to conflicts of interest. And I would ask if any committee members have conflict to declare as it relates to any item on today's agenda. Okay, hearing none, I will move on to the public agenda. And we do have a presentation for item 7C, so that will be held. But I would ask if any members have any other items that they would like to hold for discussion. John?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to hold 6A, C, and 6A, C, and D.
C and D. And do any other members have any items that they would like to hold? I would like to hold 6E and 10. So with that, could we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented, excluding 6A, C, D, and E, 7, and 10?
Okay, I'll move that.
John, thank you. Seconder? Aram, thank you very much. And so we will move on to, I guess, 6A. And so I will ask Alan to address 6A.
Thank you, Chair Emery. Item 6A on the agenda is a $35 million award over 5 years to multiple vendors for demand maintenance work that may be required on the various heating systems in our buildings, including all buildings, including Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation as well. This work was tendered using a 3-stage public procurement process in which the successful proponents were scored based on a rated criteria process, and then any adjustments that they had indicated to the set price list that was published within the RFP. The final outcome was that there were no adjustments to the published price list. There were 5 successful vendors, 3 of whom were incumbents and 2 who are new to the program. And then successful vendors were assigned to specific buildings within our portfolio. In determining the requested approval amount, FM staff reviewed previous work orders for all of TCHC, so not just ones initiated by facilities management, but through all of TCHC channels. This new contract, once in place, will be included in the quarterly reconciliation of preventive and demand maintenance contracts to ensure that the approved spends are not exceeded. This reconciliation will also include a forecasting component, which will ensure that if spends are approaching approved limits, the necessary approvals can be obtained in advance through this committee or whatever necessary channels we need to have anything approved if we need to increase the approved authority to spend in the future. As with all facilities maintenance contracts, the work performed by the vendors must be approved by TCHC. We also confirm that the work is complete, and the work is also subject to a random inspection process to ensure that the work has been performed satisfactorily. In addition, there are controls now in place to ensure that there is sufficient budget in the applicable year to fund the contract. So that's part of something that we've added in with the finance actually has added in for the 2023 budget process to ensure that we're making sure everything is in compliance. I'm certainly happy to answer whatever questions there are on this award.
John?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Alan and Chair. So in the previous contract, there were 4 companies that were awarded and we went to 5 this year. Why is that the case?
Thank you. Through the chair, we do look for the number of companies that are approved, and it is in our best interest to have as many companies as we can on the contract, because that ensures that we have ability. Should there be a company that doesn't perform satisfactorily, then we have more companies to rely on to complete the work, as well as we just then have more companies performing the work and also have better backup coverage.
And so, how many bidders were there on this contract?
I can get that for you. So we did have 6 bidders in total.
And was one of the bidders a former incumbent?
Yes, we have.
Sorry, so there were 6 bidders, 5 of which were given the award. Was the 6th bidder previously an incumbent?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's all I needed to know. Just and I gather okay, I don't need to go into it anymore. That probably answers my question. Sorry, one other question does come to mind. Sorry, so the companies that are incumbents, will they be assuming all of the same buildings or geographical locations as they did before, so that there's a familiarity, or does it all get mixed up?
No, sorry, through the chair, we do try to assign same areas because, as you note correctly, there is familiarity with the buildings, with the tenants, just with the different building systems. So we do try whenever possible to assign the same group portfolios, but obviously when the number of vendors change, then there will be a little bit of difference in terms of the buildings that are assigned.
And if we were to, is the work equally split, or are some vendors given, for example, instead of 20%, if you were to divide it by 5, are some vendors given 30 to 35%?
We do generally try within geographic locations to make it even. Again, I can't say it's an exact split
Right.
because of the, the makeup of the buildings. We do, though, try to group the area. We do group the areas based on geographic location, and then we also work with the proponents, the successful bidders. Because there are vendors that do have, they may have a larger presence in one area of the city versus another area of the city. So it makes sense in terms of response times, and just if they need to go back to their shop, something like that. It makes sense to try to group it so that we're geographically making the best use of the contractors, so that we get the best coverage for our buildings.
And do we welcome the bids from companies that are outside the city of Toronto?
Yes.
We do. Okay,
so if they can meet the response times that we require, absolutely.
Okay, so somebody in Mississauga or Richmond Hill, they may well be among the winning bidders then.
Absolutely. If they were to bid, pass the rated criteria, and can demonstrate and meet our commitments in terms of timely response, then absolutely.
Great. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions as it relates to this item? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve this award and recommend it to the board for approval? John? Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Nick, thank you. All in favor? Okay, motion has passed, Alan. And then I think item 6C was another one that John had pulled.
Right, and so.
Do you want to speak to it, Alan, or can we just have John ask the questions?
Through the chair, I'm comfortable with just the questions, or I can do a little bit of a preamble, but there will be much the same information in that they're the same types of contract.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
My question is, how many bidders were there on this contract?
On this particular contract, we did have, we had 3, but one didn't qualify. So it was the 2.
And these 2 have previously done this work for TCHC?
Yes, correct.
And have they done it? Are they sort of long-standing suppliers for more than 5 years?
Yes, I recognize the names. I've been here 8 years, and I can say that I've known about these companies from the time that I started, and I know previous history. They've been with working for TCHC, previously HSI, so it goes back a number of years. And there haven't been performance issues with them as vendors, and they've been responsive definitely to our needs.
So I'm just going to ask you to speculate. With it's a pretty, it's a $7 million contract. Why would we? And there are many plumbing and heating companies. Why would only 3 companies make a bid?
It can be for a number of reasons. It can be sometimes our sites can be challenging. We do have a large portfolio. We do have high requirements that we ask for to make sure that the companies that we are getting are able to service the needs, and that can just impact how many companies do make a bid.
I mean, obviously, in the previous contract, you said the more companies we have, the better, and I would agree with that. And yet here we have only 2. I'm wondering if we put up barriers to, let's call it barriers to entry, that make it difficult for a lot of companies to compete for these bids?
I wouldn't say that we put up barriers. We do have a large portfolio, although as you see, we do, you're not bidding on an entire portfolio. It can just be challenging in terms of our work, because we do require that there's 24/7 response times available. We do ask for, we have set criteria for emergency responses. And I'm just speculating based on my knowledge of the industry, but there are companies that just don't, there's enough work that they don't need to look to bid on something that can be more challenging than when they can go and bid on this, similar type of work for a condo corporation where you may not have the same response times that we're asking for, as an example.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions as it relates to item 6C? Brian, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm just wondering, as we're separating our portfolio out, and I know right now we're doing all the work for both the seniors as well as ourselves, but is there in the future any thought of going on a bidding separately for the different portfolios? I mean, would that allow more vendors to bid?
Through the chair, I don't believe the way the RFPs are structured, the company, it doesn't have to bid, and in fact generally isn't bidding on the entire portfolio. So even if we were to separate it into 2, it would have the same effect as what we're doing today, because they do have the ability to bid on certain groups, and they're not assigned for a full portfolio. Given that we continue to own the buildings in the seniors portfolio, it would be my recommendation that we that we deliver the capital in the buildings. I would strongly support that we always continue to do the preventive maintenance in these buildings because it just makes sense. And I think a lesson learned from when we had contract managed buildings, that was an area that definitely could have been improved upon in terms of what was being done with the preventive maintenance. So I would never want to see preventive maintenance done outsourced, if you will, to another, not with TCHC, I guess is what I would say. I think it makes sense. And I don't think by just splitting out seniors as an example that we would see any difference in terms of the number of companies that are putting forth their applications when the RFP goes out, because they still have that ability to they're not getting the whole portfolio.
So could somebody bid on just one operating unit?
They
Like
could
on a smaller company?
They could look at that, yes. And we do look at that through our procurement practices, and we work with procurement to understand what's the best strategy to try to ensure that we get enough bidders, or as many as we can, and that we get qualified bidders. And that's sometimes where it comes down to we want to make sure we have companies that can meet our standards, and we do have standards that may be higher than what other landlords have in terms, specifically in terms of emergency response times, because we do require that vendors attend, in a particular amount of time.
No, I just wondered whether our size is one of the barriers. But if they can bid on just one operating unit, then that probably would allow a smaller company to bid if they wanted to come and hopefully meet our criteria.
Yeah, no, we certainly are open to receiving bids. I think again, it just speaks to the way the market is as well, right? There are. I think we have more work than we have vendors, and I'm not just saying that for these programs. I think just in general, in the industry, it just as it's much an employee market right now, it's a contractor market or a vendor market right now in terms of the amount of work that they can get versus what the availability is.
I just wondering, as we've been talking about diversity of contractors, allowing other groups to come in, just how that might be facilitated in some of these projects. But anyways, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Alan as it relates to item 6C? So could I ask for a motion to approve the recommendations included in this report, and we will follow that up with a recommendation for their approval by the board. John, thank you. Brian, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Okay, motion carried. And then I think the next one was 6D. And again, I think this was John. So let's just go to John's questions, Alan.
Certainly, whatever you'd like, Chair, or I can give a small preamble if you'd like.
No, I'm sure most of the information will come out through his questions.
Okay.
Sure. So this is a fairly large award, and the reason for it is mentioned as partly because of high energy costs of this rather high energy consumption because of this rather old building. What are the energy costs for this building, and how much do we anticipate we'll save when the retrofit is done on an annual basis?
I would have to get exactly what the energy costs are for this. I can certainly do that and then provide it to you. In terms of retrofits like this, we've generally been seeing, and again, it's, it does vary depending on the building. It is also specific to the tenant base as well. So with our energy retrofits, we can we can affect the physical structure of the building in terms of the cladding, better windows, those types of things, water efficiency, in terms of shower heads and things like that, energy efficient lighting. We tend to be seeing around a 10% reduction with buildings, but I do caveat that with we do and need to continue to work closely with our tenants, because we can make all the physical changes we want in a building, which will help, but then it also comes down to how the building is being used. And we do have an energy conservation team that does more of the maybe I'll say soft skills, where we work with tenants to try to reduce the amount of garbage, as an example, because that's a cost in the building. We work with tenants on how to conserve water, how to conserve electricity. We do spot audits on buildings where we see high energy use. For an example, we have buildings where we know that it can be the middle of winter and the heat is on, or the middle of summer and the air conditioning is on. But when you go and look at the outside of the building, you'll see 30, maybe even 50% of the windows are open.
So,
and that, sorry.
Sorry. So I guess I'm thinking that if this was a privately held building, the owner of the building would look at its energy costs and look at its expenditures and figure out a payback period. Otherwise they might think, okay, if I'm only making a 1 or 2% change in my overall heating, the payback's going to be 30 years or longer. I'm not interested in that. And that's, is it possible for you to provide that by the time this comes to the board?
I can certainly take that back and talk to the team.
And essentially, it involves knowing, what the annual energy costs of this building are. And I would think that we would have some sort of indication as to what kind of efficiencies we're expecting out of each of these changes.
We do absolutely take a look at that. I will just caution that we can't make a decision solely based on payback, though, because we do have to look at, ensuring that our buildings get the capital improvements that they require, because we know that our buildings we're going to be using them for many more years to come. So we do need to ensure that our buildings are maintained properly from a capital perspective, as well as we also need to look to take into consideration the tenant comfort. And,
of course. Yeah.
We can get the energy efficiency, but there is also windows stop the draft, and improved ventilation just makes for a better living environment for our tenants. So all of those things are considered when we do look at a project. So we don't just specifically look at payback.
Right. No, and I understand that. We want to be a responsible landlord, but
absolutely.
Still, if we're investing the $12 million, it would be good to know what kind of savings, we hope to realize out of all of these improvements. And I know, having been on the board of TAF, that's one of the things that, they look at and they provide that sort of information they provide.
Absolutely. And we work very closely with TAF, and we have a very good working relationship with TAF.
Great. Okay, so if I don't need to make a motion, but if you could, endeavor to try to provide that for the time of the board, that would be very much appreciated.
I'll get that information for you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Alan as it relates to 6D? So could I have a motion to approve the recommendations in this report? And we'll recommend it to the board for approval with the additional information that Alan will provide, as John has requested. John, can you move that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Naram, seconder. Thank you. All in favor? Okay, the motion is passed. The last one is item 6E. And I just had a couple of questions, Alan. So maybe I'll just jump into my questions.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Emery.
So there is a reference to funds being reallocated on page 43, and I didn't write down the total, but I did note that in the chart, it only shows 7.5 million being reallocated from one line to the other. And I just want to make sure that the other reallocations were.
So I think, Chair Emery, if we're looking at attachment 1, is that?
Yeah, so you talk about 7 million being reallocated to local move out, 4.1, 8.6.
Yes.
But in the actual chart, there's only a reference to, yeah, the 7.5 coming out of,
And are we looking at the 7.5? Oh, sorry, which? Oh, I see.
I'm just curious, you're reallocating those from where to where? Or like from where to the items that you've identified?
We would have. So we have the 7.5, which is showing coming out of the holistic and into the single dwelling. Now, this is where we stand currently. So this wouldn't, once we have approval to reallocate these, then we would be able to show them. But this is a snapshot of where we are. And perhaps now that I get your question, I see exactly where you're coming from. And I think in future, we should show the requested changes in this before providing it. So we will do that going forward.
Yes, it's just,
Yes. Yeah,
you don't
I see
give us
exactly.
the from where to these items. So so if you could update in the
Yes.
future so that we understand, and
Absolutely.
I'm presuming that there is sufficient room in whatever lines you're moving these funds from.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not impeding any other programs.
That's correct. We make sure that there is room within the budget to ensure that it hasn't been allocated to any projects currently. And I can assure you that we don't exceed the 350 million. So it's coming minus one, and it could be multiple places that it's coming from. It might not be a one-to-one reallocation, but we can absolutely.
Depends on what space you have in different buckets.
Yes,
you might have
correct.
to take a little bit from here and a little bit.
Absolutely.
But maybe if you could indicate that so we have an idea of where it's coming from.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned something about milestones set for funding, and I just wondered if maybe you could elaborate on the milestones.
Sure. So for the milestones, what we're talking about would be specifically within the National Housing Co-Investment funding. So there are requirements that are attached to that funding that we have to, at the end of the 10-year period, we have to have met a 25% energy reduction across the portfolio. So that is something that is a requirement that we take into consideration when we're looking at projects. And I know at the next BIFAC meeting, we will be having a session on project prioritization. And that is one of the factors that we do have to take into account, as well as the National Co-Investment also has a tie to accessibility. And we do have a requirement to ensure that a certain percentage of units are accessible based on the tenant needs that are the accessibility needs that a specific tenant has. And we set it up that way because we didn't want to just have a blanket requirement for accessibility, because it does depend on each individual tenant. Some tenants have, very a large number of accessibility needs, and some may not require as many as other tenants. So those are requirements that we have. And then in terms of milestones, other specifically, we are required on a quarterly basis to submit submit our submissions to both the city and to CMHC in order to get paid. So we do the work in advance, like we do the work, we complete the work, and then we submit invoices to whether we're going from the city funding or whether we're going from the National Co-Investment funding. We submit invoices to those two bodies. They review the invoices. They need to approve the invoices, and then they make a payment based on that quarterly submission.
Okay, so it's quarterly draw requests.
Correct. And that's done in conjunction. That's done through facilities management in conjunction with our finance partners.
Okay, and I understand the other, the energy efficiencies and the tenant accessibility criteria. And is, I just was asking if FCI is your only KPI, or if you have a number of other KPIs that you use to measure the value of your $350 million spend.
We do look at FCI, which I would say is probably the top one, as you've noted, that we do look for, given our objective. Other ones that we do look at are, as we've touched on, definitely the energy efficiency. We want to make sure that we've got the accessibility to meet our requirements from that. And then we also do take, and this would be more of a soft KPI, I will say, because there's not a specific number that can be attached to it. But we do take a look at the improvement that the project is going to do in terms of tenant comfort or the livability of our buildings. And I know that's, you can't put a hard number to that, but we do certainly take a look at when we get information from tenant surveys and things like that.
And that was,
yeah, we do take that information into consideration. Because that is another very important piece of any of the projects we do. Like, obviously, we're looking to make sure we've got our buildings that are well maintained. We want to make sure, our buildings are structurally sound, that we've done all sort of those basics. We're getting energy efficiency, and then absolutely all of those things added together, they will impact tenant comfort in a positive way and just the livability of the building.
yes, and tenant satisfaction was one of the KPIs I was wondering if you incorporated, and you do that not directly, but just through general surveys.
Correct. And it depends too when we have projects. So we have a group within facilities management called Plan Project Support. And they are a group that supports projects that we have that are very intrusive to tenants. I can't necessarily say exactly which projects they support, because it does depend on the nature of the project as well as also the makeup of the building. But when there's a building or a project that we identify in conjunction with our partners in the building staff and operations staff that we believe is going to need some extra support, then Plan Project Services is engaged to work with building staff, to work with the tenants in the building to help understand how the project is, what is the project, why are we doing the project, how is the project going to unfold, and then also after the fact, we do provide education, for example, to the tenants, because there may be something in a building system that has changed. So we need to provide that support to tenants to help them understand, okay, you now have a different type of thermostat than previously you had no thermostat in your unit. You now have the ability to control the temperature in your building on an individual basis, and we look at that. And then through interaction with the tenants, we're able to get feedback as to how is the project done, and we also do work with Julio, who leads the tenant engagement group, to get information from tenants on what are their capital priorities in their buildings. And again, that's just another input that we have into capital project selection.
So for the more intrusive projects, it's you get direct feedback as opposed to just general surveys where, okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions on capital budget and Q2 report, unless other members do.
So if I
could I have a motion?
Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
just in the context of the last item, the one of the questions that you had, Alan and I had actually looked at a slightly revised version of the motion to be adopted by the committee, which would make it clear that when the report speaks to the reallocation of funds, it's funds within the existing capital budget. And so we've got a slightly revised version of the motion that addresses that issue, subject to the committee's approval.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Do any other members have any questions on the revised motion? So could I have someone move the approval? Could I have a seconder? John, thank you. All in favor? Perfect. And received. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Chair and committee members.
we will move on to item number 7. And I'm going to turn this over to Louisa. I think 7A is the Microsoft.
Yes, are there any, thank you, Chair Emery. Are there any questions on the Microsoft agreement from the committee members? We are seeking to consolidate all of our Microsoft spend under one enterprise agreement with Microsoft. We did initiate our first enterprise agreement with Microsoft in 2019, but it did not incorporate all the requirements within the needs of that. And we did engage a few procurements over the last number of years, and this is to consolidate all of our Microsoft requirements over the next 3 years, including any new initiatives that we will be engaging in, including any cybersecurity initiatives, and also the replacement of end-of-life technology, primarily around our email systems, which are incorporated into this cost.
Are there any questions for Louisa? Louisa, I just had 2.
Sure.
There's a note there that says that the funding for the direct award is within the budget. But there's only a small amount that's actually in 2022.
Correct. This.
So I just wanted, if you could clarify that statement.
Yes, so we did anticipate, of course, the requirement to enter into a renewal agreement and our requirements for 2022. And so when we initiated the 2022 budget under our Microsoft spend, the small portion that was incorporated into any additional software was included in that budget for 2022. We are going forward, as we do every year in 2023, to request the Microsoft licensing costs in our operating budget.
Okay. It wasn't clear to me. The statement made it seem like all of the funding had been included in there.
No.
And this is a question that I've asked before as it relates to seniors, that we're approving something that impacts their budget and whether their boards approved it. I don't know that I understand clearly what the relationship is here. If we're just totally responsible for the acquiring of these services and we just get to charge it through to them and they don't have a say, or whether they actually have a budget that includes these amounts, and should we be getting prior approval before we're approving these spends on their behalf?
So let me start to answer that question. The comment that's in the risk and implications section notes that a portion of these funds will be recovered through a shared delivery agreement with TCHC. That's an existing agreement. Their obligations already exist pursuant to that agreement. So to the extent that they need board approval to contribute, they've already secured that approval when they entered into the shared delivery agreement. So going forward, the shared delivery agreement contemplates that we will implement these kind of measures and that they will share the cost. That's already part of our existing agreement with seniors housing. They've approved that as of the June 1st transition to the Seniors Housing Corporation.
So it's no matter what the actual dollars are?
The obligations that they have are to contribute to our cost of providing them the services that we provide to them as we determine.
Okay. And when it comes to their budget, do you provide them with information as it relates to those?
Absolutely.
Okay. But they can't say that's over budget, or they're just obligated to pay these amounts. whatever their share is
they
of
are
our contracts.
They are obligated to contribute to the costs that we incur in securing the measures that we need to secure to provide them with service. If they want access to the information technology resources that we provide to them through that service delivery agreement, they have to contribute to the costs.
And they have no right to say
Correct.
that's too much. Okay, as long as they can't say it's too much. That's my concern, that they could determine that their fair share is more than they're willing to pay.
So there
Perfect.
is an ongoing conversation that will take place with them about their costs. And absolutely those conversations continue, but there are the principle, I think, that underlies the question is the answer to that question is they are already committed to contributing to the cost of these services.
Okay, so we don't need any
Agreed.
prior approval for their share. That's
Correct.
my concern. Okay, perfect. And Brian has a question.
Well, I just was a clarification whether those costs are done on a by unit basis. Is that how it's allocated?
I believe that for some of the services that we provide, without getting too deep into the details of our agreement with seniors housing, for some of the costs that we provide, it's calculated on the basis of a per unit cost. For some of the resources that we provide, it may be a function of the number of employees. For some of the services that we provide, it may be a number of particular users of a software that inform the licensing fees that we pay. So depending on the nature of the service that we provide, the calculation may vary.
Dara, if I could my apologies, Director Smith.
Oh, no, I just assumed that the 4 million plus would be, since everybody gets the service, it would be done on some sort of basis of per unit.
Correct. I just want to add for the committee is that I regularly meet with Toronto Seniors Housing and share our roadmap and our technology plans for next year. I've also shared with them a high level number on what that budget would be for submission to for information technology services. So I just want to reassure the committee that we're not just blindsiding them, that we do have I do meet regularly with that team. We discuss the initiatives that we need to undertake, particularly this one around the modernization of Microsoft, which will benefit both corporations and the implementation of Office 365. So those conversations are pretty frequent, and several times a month we meet with that organization from an IT perspective.
And we appreciate that. It's just, my question is more of governance, and I understand Dara's explanation, so I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for Louisa as it relates to this direct award? So could I have a motion to approve for recommendation to the board? Naram, thank you very much. And a seconder? John, thank you. All in favor? Motion has been passed. Thank you, Louisa. And then we'll move on to your home's project closeout. And I'm not sure if our guests from KPMG have arrived.
I'm here.
Yes.
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Oh, Omar. Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome.
How are you?
Sorry. Exciting BIFAC meeting.
Yes, very.
So Louisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So you have in front of you two reports on the Homes Project closeout. One was provided by myself in collaboration with my team, just summarizing the status of the Homes project and the fact that we have completed on the scope that we had committed to in the original project plan approved in 2019. We outlined a number of activities that had occurred during the 3-year plan, including any adjustments that we had made to the schedule, challenges that we experienced with the COVID-19 pandemic, and how we needed to move the team from in-person collaboration in a war room, we called it, to a virtual project, and also outlining the number of adjustments we made in recommendation to what KPMG has provided from a quality assurance perspective. It is a very lengthy report. I appreciate if you have any questions on that, but it does go through all the aspects of the project, the technology scope that we delivered, the processes that we've implemented, the data conversion that we completed, the training and change management that were also completed as per project scope.
Are there any questions for Louisa on the Homes closeout report? And I think, Louisa, you are bringing back to a future meeting, the end users to discuss benefits and deficiencies or improvements, additional improvements they'd like to see.
Yes.
Which I think will also be helpful for the committee.
Yes, and so instead of boring you with another lengthy report, we are bringing a number of users from TCHC to present to the committee in the November meeting.
Mm-hmm. And so are there any other questions for Louisa? The only question I had, Louisa, was on page 4. You talk about a number of programs that are being deferred, appliance ordering, unit turnover. And I know when we received internal audit reports on those items, Homes was the cure-all, basically. That was, once Homes was implemented, all of these recommendations would be satisfied. And I just wondered about the timing of those additional.
Yeah, so just to provide a bit of an update, as this report was written a few weeks ago. So one of the items that we had deferred was the deployment of the annual unit inspection. That work is actually now started. So we did need to do a little bit more work with the operations team to determine what were the items that they required for inspection and revising of the inspection report. So that work's been completed and the training is in progress. And I'm not sure if Nadia is on the call or not, but we have commenced the and have deployed that aspect of the technology. For the move out program, because we had built the solution based on a more of a decentralized model, and there were some decisions within the operations group to maintain that as a centralized process in the short term, we are reviewing that process. And the solution has been developed, but it may not necessarily be meeting our requirements. And so there's some ongoing work with the operations team to determine next steps on that. The other item, I believe, is around the appliance ordering. So we continue to use the current solution that we have with appliance ordering. Our challenge is really around vendor adoption of the solution that we have proposed. And so we're working with Yardi, and we'll engage our procurement team to address any of those concerns raised by the vendors and using that tool. So it is not actually a solution within our system. It's a portal to allow them to put their appliances on this particular portal, allow our team to order from that site. So there are some questions from our vendors, and we need to address those. And I believe the last one was around, my apologies.
Inventory management.
Inventory management. So I think Nagesh may also be on the call. So we are working through the policies and procedures. So we do have procured the inventory management solution, but are still waiting on what processes we will be implementing within that tool.
Okay, I think these have significant financial implications for the organization. So I was just wondering on timelines.
As stated, I believe we'll get to resolution on the, well, we have gotten resolution on the annual unit inspection, and we will get to
unit
resolution.
Turnover. I understand that's well under. Yep.
Yeah. So on the inventory management, I'm not sure if Nagesh can speak to it right now, but that is still an ongoing discussion. And I don't have a resolution on that yet for timing.
I can comment on that, Louisa. So, Madam Chair, we have engaged KPMG to take a look at the policy that we've prepared, as well as the procedures. We've had the first kickoff meeting this week. KPMG would take a look at the system, the procedures that we have developed, and the policy document before we bring it to the ELT for approval. And then once it's approved by the ELT, then we will commence with the testing of the system and the conversion. So we don't have a definitive timeline as of now. We're just waiting for KPMG to provide their input and then come up with a plan for testing and training.
Okay, I would appreciate, they do have significant impact on the organization, so I would appreciate updates as we, develop solutions and start implementing. Thank you. Are there any other questions? This was a huge project, Louisa, and congratulations. I know it took a village, so please say thank you to your village, and congratulations as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Emery. I'd also like to acknowledge this committee's support of the project, and that was very much appreciated. I know that we also have just a closeout report, just one slide, just to close the loop on KPMG, who was our quality assurance advisor throughout the project. So they were engaged right from the start of the project, and also were part of the development of the integrated project plan. They were involved in a lot of the decision making we made around resourcing, and were with us through the entire 36 months that this project took to execute. And so KPMG is here to provide their final report on the Homes project. Omar?
Yes, so that's item 6 or 7C. So I'll turn it over to you, Omar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks everyone once again. And one question, am I presenting the content, or will someone be putting it up for me?
Sonia? Do you have access to the slide? There.
All right, there we go. That makes it a little easier for me. Thank you. So apologies that Sandy couldn't join me today due to a last moment personal situation, but he sends his regrets. As Louisa noted, KPMG had been on the project from the very beginning to the completion in a quality assurance function. And just to re-highlight, if you will, some basic premises of what that involved, because I have been in front of this committee before to discuss our role, but just to give everybody a very quick thumbnail sketch of what that meant for proper context. Next slide, please. Our role, as Louisa indicated, was to be the independent eyes and ears on the ground of the project, reviewing primarily the risks, evaluating overall quality of the project throughout the life cycle, so that the right things could be done relative to best practices in the industry. And that included ensuring that the proper methods and industry-leading practices were being adopted by the project team throughout the entire life cycle of this project, including the involvement of Yardi. We made sure that quality was built into the project procedures so that it minimized the chances of defects of the application, the software, and the process that the end user recipients received. And we also conformed part of the process to ensure that the proper issue resolution processes were in place to identify issues early and to provide solutions for those issues along the way. And finally, providing that independent lens, once again, to the many deliverables that were being produced to make sure they were based on quality, on specifications, and that they supported the entire rollout of this transformation. So just to highlight some of those bullet points to give the committee some proper context. And now I'll move on to the second slide, which is the reason why I believe I was asked to be here today. And that is essentially to align our view of the project as far as the closeout of the project is concerned, and to reiterate and highlight some of those observations that we have on the closeout of this project. There were the final of the 3 rollouts that pertain to track 2 went live on schedule on May 16th, which is effectively becomes the demarcation point of the conclusion of the project. And From everything we looked at, the intended functionality, the workflow, and the reporting process were implemented according to the approved scope. The complex data conversion exercise was performed, and we noted that there were no unclosed severity 1 issues, meaning that the conversion of the data of the legacy system to the new system was done without major incidents, which is the right thing to do. And all of the readiness activities that Louisa and the management team prepared to have a proper rollout to the end user community was done according to plan, and all the support functions were in place. We also, as part of our, as I said, our regular risk reviews, we did not identify any major risks that were present prior to the go live, which is an encouraging sign and something you must have in order to go live with a system like this. And finally, we also noted that management has now become obviously post-project closure focused on pursuing the required post-go live stabilization and putting in place the required business sustainment operating models to measure and realize the benefits that this project is intended to achieve. So those are really all the highlights that from KPMG's point of view we're presenting on the project closure.
Can I ask if any members have any questions for Omar? I just had a general question. It's more about whether there's any further involvement from KPMG and if you had any issues or risks that you thought BIFAC should be aware of for the future and the future operation of homes.
No, our contract is formally closed at this point,
Okay.
along with the project closure, and I do not have any risks to highlight from that perspective. Anything we would have had, we would have disclosed as part of the regular reporting process. Sure.
There's nothing that we should be watching out for as we move forward.
No, I think the plan is now to for the team, as I said, they're going to be focusing on realizing the benefits of the project, which will take some effort to do that going forward. But I wouldn't highlight that as a risk. I think it's just an important action item that management is committing to doing.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Omar or Louisa as it relates to the homes closeout? So again, I'd like to offer my congratulations and thanks. And could I have a motion to receive these two reports, 7B and C? I'll just combine it. Brian, thank you. Mohammed, thank you very much. All in favor? Perfect. Reports have been received, and thank you again. And we do look forward to hearing about the implementation and, you know, some of the outstanding issues that still need to be addressed in some way or another. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thanks, Omar.
Thank you.
And then I think the last item that was pulled is item number 10. And I will look to Nagesh, or sorry, Karim. Unless there's anything you wanted to highlight, I had a question. So is there anything about the report that you would like to highlight, Karim?
Sure. Just a quick comment that comparison versus last reporting period, there were 5, there are currently now 5 in progress and 1 not started. So that is better than the previous reporting period wherein 4 were started. So now all of those which were not started, out of that 3 have been started, and management is working on implementing with the new timeline that has been provided.
And we appreciate the summaries. My question just related to the completion of the parking, the 2018 report, because there was a reference in the homes report about, tracking for parking. So I was wondering if you could just speak to the timing on that.
Okay, so let me specifically refer to that recommendation. So current timeline on that is Q3 of 2022. We've been advised that, they have included the parking related data in homes now, and in future Excel spreadsheets won't be used. Homes will be used instead. And the complete implementation timeline, revised timeline, is now Q3 2022. We will follow up with the management. And when when internal audit presents to BIFAC 31 December status, at that time we will know about the implementation status of that, and accordingly we will present it to you, to the BIFAC. Current time.
Okay. Can I just ask what parking revenue is for TCHC?
My apologies, I have no idea. Nagesh, maybe?
I'm checking. I can let you know in a minute.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious. I was wondering if it was a potential, if these changes would have an impact on parking revenue. If that's a difficult number to get your hands on, Nagesh, maybe you can just provide it.
Yes, I was just going to say that, Chair Emery. We could
Yeah.
could send that to the committee afterwards if you'd like.
Because
I can just
I know
quickly
it wasn't.
it's not up to date information, but when we did the audit and whatever is contained in the audit report, I have that in front of me. In 2016, it was approximately 11 million.
In 2016.
Yes.
Okay. So it's significant. Okay.
It was split between tenant and commercial. It was 8 million and 3 million, roughly.
Okay. So it is significant, and there is some potential there. So thank you, Nagesh. If you want to give us more up-to-date information, you can just pass that on.
Sure, Madam Chair.
Whenever you can find it, because I know it wasn't a planned question. Could I ask if there are any other questions as it relates to matters on the agenda, or any other business to bring before the public session of BIFAC? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to terminate the public meeting of BIFAC? John, usually the hands go up really quickly for this one. Mohammed, all in favor, and
Sorry,
thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Dara, did you have something?
I may have just got it. Did we have a mover and a seconder to receive the audit report from Karim?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to, yes. Could I have a motion to receive? Naram, thank you. And Mohammed, is there a seconder?
Thank you.
All in favor of receiving Karim's report? Thank you very much. Sorry for the oversight. Thanks, Dara.
Madam Chair,
I
I have the number for 2021 parking. The tenant parking for 2021 is 9.4 million.
Yeah, and the commercial?
Commercial parking is 1.8 million, which includes commercial non-tenant parking and commercial parking.
Yeah. Okay, so it really hasn't even increased since 2016.
Yeah.
Basically the same. Okay. Maybe we should look at our parking rates. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
My apologies,
sorry.
Chair Emery, for interruption. It's Louisa. I did not hear approval for the Microsoft agreement as well. That is within the committee's approval. I'm not sure. My apologies.
Right. I've got it.
I did do that one.
Moved by Director Mansour and seconded by Director Campbell. Yep.
My apologies, Chair.
Perfect.
No worries.
Okay, and then I did B and C, 7B and C together.
That's correct.
Perfect. For
We've got that.
receipt. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I think we're all covered with our motions. Okay, Thank you, and I hope everyone has a nice day. Enjoy the sunshine.
Yep.
Take care.
Thanks.